Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Real 1% podcast. Today, we got another special Master Guns veteran, retired out of the Marine Corps, my man Thomas. He's from California. He enlisted in training 2002. He's deployed to Kuwait, Haiti, Iraq. He was actually recognized as the Combat Service Support Marine of the Year in 2005. He was promoted to sergeant in 2005. He made it all the way to Master Guns. He was in the recruiting field for quite some time, and he has some very important information that he'd like to share with all you guys today, and yet about leaving the military, about his own transition, and just about still serving as a veteran and giving back to the military community. So without further ado, Thomas, appreciate you being on the show today. How you doing so far?
I really can't complain, and I appreciate the intro. That's way more kind than anything that I'm used to. You say special Master Guns. I just a human being that did some time and, had a pretty interesting story, throughout the course of the last 2 decades. But I appreciate being here, Mike.
No problem, man. I see that uniform in the background, man, looking good. Everyone always says the Marine got the best dress uniform, and I mean, it looks pretty good to me. The Army used to have them green pickle suits, but they try to upgrade to the blues, so they try to do a little bit better. But I wanted to ask you, what made you join the Marines in the first place?
God, I don't even really know the answer outside of it was the Marine recruiter. So I was your typical high school student, had some ideas on what I wanted to do afterwards. The military was never an option. And so one day I remember sitting in the quad and just kind of seeing off in the distance this young Marine walking by and, just had this flock of people following him. And so I didn't really pay much attention to it. But sitting in my next period class right after lunch, the Marines came in and gave a presentation. As I sat there and kind of listened to the story, I realized that young Marine I saw was a former high school student that had graduated a couple of years before. And I could just physically see the transformation in him. I could see just how much he had evolved and just matured. And it was something that piqued my interest, but not enough to take any type of action. So let it go a couple of weeks, and I find myself, out at a party and bump into another guy that happened to be a Marine. And so it was right then and there. His recruiter kind of got his hooks in me and made me set an appointment in maybe a state of not so much clarity, leaving a high school party. But next day I showed up and met the recruiter and was just blown away by that experience, because it was the first time that an adult had really sat down and asked me what it was that I wanted to achieve. And just that conversation alone opened up my eyes to realize that service would be a direction that I wanted to go. And so that was it. That's how I ended up in the Marine Corps.
So did you end up leaving like right after you graduated high school, or did you try to make it on the civilian sector for a little while and see what you could do? Or what was the timeline like for you leaving for boot camp?
Yeah, so I did eventually go right after high school. So I shipped out in July, graduated high school, I think at the tail end of May. But there were some moments of doubt as we got a little bit closer, because I'll be honest with you, when I joined the Marine Corps, I didn't really want to be a Marine. I wanted to be a salesman like that Marine recruiter, like that guy's ability to just sit down and listen and empathize and connect. I was really drawn to that, was just the ability to help people. And so when I realized that I couldn't be a Marine recruiter right away and that I'd have to go off and deploy and have another job, it was enough to make me take pause for a second. So I actually tried to go into the office and quit. The recruiters just wouldn't let me do that, but I'll save that story for another day, because I don't know what the statute of limitations are with recruiters from, the early 2000s.
Okay. All right. No problem. So when you got shipped off to boot camp and everything like that, what was, did you have any like eye awakening moments? Like, holy shit, I'm here now. Like, what was it for you when you got to Paris Island? If that's where you went, right?
No, actually, I was a San Diego Marine, so West Coast guy. So I'll put it to you like this: the second I got there, first thought in my head, and I think it's like this for most people that serve in the Marine Corps, is what the hell have I done to myself? And I should not be here. And to be honest with you, if there had been this imaginary line that I could have gotten into, where I could have just escaped and quit and never done it, I probably would have gone into that line. But it was the fear of humiliation and not completing something that I had told everybody I was going to do that really kept me there. And good God, looking back, 20 plus years later, I'm glad that I had that extra pressure on me to make sure that I got through. because it was a life-changing experience, 100% for sure. And it's definitely set the groundwork for me in the work that I have now and just kind of what life looks like since I've transitioned and retired out.
Looking back on it now, what was one of your favorite memories of basic training?
I don't think that there was ever one favorite. I think, actually, no, I take it back. So another guy I went to high school with, and so we were high school classmates. Didn't really roll in the same social circles in high school. He was kind of like the favorite of all the recruiters in the office. So he was always there. He was the physically fit one. He was the motivated one. But I shipped to boot camp before he did. And so on my graduation day, I bumped into that soon-to-be Marine, that Marine recruit in the chow hall, and just saw the absolute misery on his face. And I knew that I was escaping that depot that day. So the fact of the matter is, in that moment, I felt bad for him, but it was time for me to hightail it out. But yeah, long story short, that my happiest moment was graduating and getting off of that depot.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then I got your bio, and it said you deployed to Camp Fox, Kuwait, shortly after, pretty much in February 2003. How was it going to your first duty station, and then pretty much finding out that, hey, we're getting ready to deploy?
Yeah. So look, I was pretty pissed off when I was a newly minted Marine. And again, going back to what inspired me, it was the recruiter that connected and painted the picture and made it all sound, I don't want to say rosy, but just I had different ideas of what the Marine Corps was, and just kind of on the timing that I had through training. My timeline was kind of accelerated vice what your typical Marine's going to get as they start this process. So just for context, I graduated boot camp in October of 2002. They pushed me through Marine combat training, which was that next follow-on training. That was about a month long. They pushed me through my MOS school. And quite literally before Christmas, I was a fully trained Marine. So through boot camp, through that combat training, through my MOS school. Before graduating that school, we had reps from the unit that I was going to come out to visit us. And basically, as I'm still a student, they're telling us, hey, you're going to get a 10-day leave period. So you're going to be able to go home, hang out with your family. You're going to come check right back into this unit, and we're deploying overseas. So quite literally, I remember being on holiday leave, and I'm in my mom's room, and I'm an 18-year-old Marine, and it's the day after Christmas, and I just start bawling my eyes out and begging my mom, like, don't make me go back. I don't want to do this. This was a mistake. And so, at that time, I thought I was going to be able to convince her to get on board and help me find a way through this problem. And I'll never forget it. She just told me really sternly, like, hey, knock it off. Don't be a little, and you're gonna go off and you're gonna do what needs to happen. And I just know that everything's gonna be okay once you get out there. You're gonna have an interesting story to tell. You're gonna make an impact, but you're not gonna quit this, because that's not what you do and that's not what Marines do. So really quickly, I kind of dried my tears out of my eye, realized I wasn't going to be able to work through mom anymore, and took my butt out to North Carolina, where I was stationed at 2nd Supply Battalion with the 2nd Force Service Support Group. And it was probably about 6 weeks after checking into that unit that I found myself on a bird, getting ready to fly over to Kuwait in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So about 6 months of military service, and I find myself deployed to a foreign land as a private first class in the Marine Corps, just ready to take on what needed to happen there. But it was definitely a crash course in what life could be like in the military really early on.
That's wild, because you say you had the happiest day of graduating basic training, and then you go through your other schooling, and then you're pretty much getting recruited in the schooling saying, hey, we're getting ready to go. I had something similar, but we didn't have like people from the unit come to my my AIT. But as soon as I got to Fort Campbell, they're like, you ready to deploy? I'm like, I guess. I mean, what am I going to tell them? No. I mean, I guess, like, yeah, you're going to go on leave. And, in the military, you got to accrue your leave. So it's like, I think I had to go in the hole at first because I didn't even have enough time to go on block leave. So I found myself in a similar scenario as you in 2007. So I feel your pain on that. And it's like, damn, that's a rude awakening when you're in a time of war and you're getting shipped off overseas as a young adult, damn near still a kid. So for you going over to Camp Fox in Kuwait, how was it for you over there? And like, what did you end up doing over there, and how long did you stay for?
Yeah. So another interesting story. So I was a supply guy by trade, and so I was
Okay.
like the administrative supply side. So again, I was supposed to be in an office. That's what was described to me. There was no offices in that fob. It was really just sand and a bunch of tents everywhere. So I ended up working in the quick reaction force. I was part of the QRF to kind of secure the base. That's what they do with the lowly PFC that doesn't know anything about their job starting out. So that was really kind of my first duty deployed, was just kind of on post, trying to make sure that we were keeping the camp secure. From there, they transferred me to be a warehouseman. So pretty pissed off, again, like disappointed with my experience, because I'm in a bunch of in this big sand parking lot, searching for little springs and gears, different springs that were needed for weapon systems, because the supply caches that were out there wasn't a whole lot of planning. We were just the central logistics hub that everything got dumped to. So as that war really started off, as we started invading Iraq, there was equipment that needed to get forward out to those lines. And so the best way I could describe it to you is that there'd probably be about a mile long lot with just rows and rows full of boxes. And so quite literally, is me and a couple other Marines just digging through these boxes, trying to find, little tiny springs, little tiny pieces of equipment that needed to go forward to kind of keep the mission rolling. So, when I got over there and I got adjusted, and this was the job that they're having me do, rather than sit there and cry and complain about it, I just kind of put my head down, had my little Walkman and my little CDs playing, and went out there and did what Marines do, find a way to find the gear that was necessary to support the guy on the other end. And really from those efforts, that kind of got me noticed early on by some senior leadership. So, coming off of that deployment, and I also was one of the lucky members that ended up on what they call a special purpose MAGTAF. So I was part of a group of about 30 that got left there to kind of retrograde that gear out. And so we thought we were going to have another year-long deployment. That's kind of what was briefed to us. But that group, we got everything done, and coming off that deployment, got a lot of attention from some senior leadership, and that's when I guess my mindset towards the Marine Corps really started to shift, because I was recognized by the work that I'd put forth, and it created a bunch of other opportunities that made the Marine Corps a bit more tolerable for me as a young Marine.
When you had that mind shift switch, what did you start feeling when you got recognized and got accolades for your work? Were you still mad, or like, what did you start feeling like then?
No, I felt like I had a little bit more say in how things went. I started having some subordinates underneath me that I could lead, and that's really where the mind shift focus was. Just getting away and not having it be all about me. I was an extremely selfish person, and I was a pretty selfish person my first year or so in the Marine Corps, and just kind of sat in this world of feeling sorry for myself, kind of throwing a pity party. And so when you realize that you just don't have a choice, and that you've just got to put your best foot forward and make the best of the situation, that was really what the game changer was for me. And it allowed me to really kind of focus my efforts on everything Marine Corps. And that made my life just quite a bit better, and is ultimately kind of what led to just some really weird, unique opportunities that I had in my first couple of years in the Corps.
Okay. But once you got back from Kuwait, then you ended up going to Haiti and then Iraq. So you were just nonstop deploying. How'd you feel on all those deployments?
Yeah, so Haiti was like a weird one, and I'll give you the quick rundown. So we come off that deployment. I've got maybe a couple of months in the Fleet Marine Force, so back in the operating forces. I'm working as the head of this administrative section within our supply unit, and life's pretty good. Start pursuing college, everything's good. I'm working directly for the lieutenant colonel and the other master gunnery sergeant that kind of ran the entire show. And so quite literally, I remember it clear as day. The lieutenant colonel that I worked for comes out and says on April Fool's Day, "Hey, Tom, just letting you know," or "Hey, Lance Corporal, just letting you know, you need to drop out of college because you're deploying to Haiti in 3 days with our battalion commander to go get on this special project." So I thought he was joking when he said this. So I go to college that night, and go to check into my class, and I find out from one of my professors that I had been disenrolled. So quite literally, it got serious really quick.
Yeah.
Next day, I started going into these conversations to learn about all this different RFID tracking technology. So really, how we track and account for supplies moving along. I got a crash course from all these DoD civilians, and then I deployed out to Haiti with my battalion commander. And we just started implementing that technology in a battlefield environment, which eventually got adopted by the Corps and became the way that we really redefined logistics. So that deployment was pretty cool, and I've got some wild stories from that too. But I was probably the youngest in rank and youngest in age on that deployment with the unit that I was with. Because we were part of the Combined Joint Task Force out there, a bunch of senior officers, a bunch of senior staff NCOs, and then all these other foreign military units were all at this university just kind of in support of that operation. So that deployment was kind of cool, and I had some pretty wild experiences. Coming back from that, that same lieutenant colonel that had sent me over to Haiti was really trying to work to help me get orders out to another unit that was a bit had a little less operational tempo on it. At the same time, we found out that the Marines our unit was getting ready to deploy back over to Taqadum, Iraq. And so I was kind of faced with this paradox of, do I take care of myself, and get to a unit that's non-deployable and focus on school, or do I go out there and deploy with the boys? And the answer was pretty simple, because I was a young NCO, as a young corporal at that time. Seeing as how I'd gone through that deployment once and gone through another one in Haiti, it just didn't seem right to not be on that deployment with them. So in about 2004, I deployed out to Taqadum, Iraq. It was supposed to be about a 7-month deployment. While I was out there, ended up taking over a section that was billeted for somebody that was a master sergeant or an E8 in the Marine Corps. Enjoyed my time out there, kind of working in this special projects realm. And then realistically, when we get towards the end of that deployment, there's an opportunity to extend. And I'd had a couple of young Marines that fell underneath me that really wanted to extend out there and do another tour. And I couldn't feel right about myself leaving people, back in Iraq that I had served with. So it was myself and another couple others that stuck around. We did another 6 months out there. But in between, that's when I got that weird award back from 2005.
Small world, man. That's where my first deployment was. We were on Spring Lake side, dude. We were the only Army. We were the battalion headquarters. I was there from 2007 to 2008, 13 and a half months TQ, man. Seen the same Marines leave and come back. Seen the same Marines stay there. So yeah, I was there with you, man. I was there probably a little bit after you, but small world, I guess. TQ was big as shit, though, right? I mean, you had Spring Lake, you had Lakeside, you had the Hotel California. That was a huge FOB, huge operation that they had going over there.
Oh yeah, Hotel California was definitely home for me. And we were the barracks that burnt down in Hotel California. So it was just interesting times.
For real, yes, to say the least. So you got, when did you end up getting the chief instructor at the corporal's course? Was that over there? Because I know they had the corporal's course on TQ, or is that something that you got when you came back from the deployment?
Yeah, so that was really kind of a filler job. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, I didn't really know much about my technical MOS. I've always been one of those people that just kind of finds a way to make things happen. So I wasn't the greatest when it came to my MOS, but what I was really good at is, working with individuals to get the job done and make sure that the mission was accomplished. So leaving that deployment, my technical knowledge just really wasn't up to snuff the same way that my peer group, that it was for my peer group. But by the time I had come off that deployment, I was so bought into the Marine Corps because I just watched the transformation happen in me, and I was making an impact on others and just kind of feeling fulfilled by, keeping everything moving forward with the people that I serve with. So when I'd come back off that unit, I had orders out to recruiter school in really the January timeframe. And so one of the things that I had wanted to do at some point was potentially serve as a drill instructor for the Marine Corps. So young motivated sergeant realizes there might be an opportunity to put together a corporal's course. And so my first sergeant at the time allowed me and a couple other sergeants to put together a company level course. And then we were able to run, I think, about 2 or 3 iterations of Marines through that. And it was just an awesome experience and definitely rounded me out.
Okay. How were you feeling when you got the recruiting orders? Because that's something that you said you wanted to do from the start, but obviously you got to, get some skin in the game, which you did, deployment after deployment after deployment. So once you came upon those orders, how were you feeling?
Oh, I was absolutely pumped. I was thrilled. It was like fulfilling a dream. The problem is that when I went back to go get a by name request, hoping that I could end back up in Sacramento and potentially recruit in the same area that I grew up in, the recruiting instructor at the time happened to be the guy who sat at the office and oversaw us when I was joining the Marine Corps. So when he found out that I had orders to recruiting and that I was trying to come back to his recruiting station, he was a little less than thrilled to allow that opportunity to happen because he was just kind of worried about the type of high school student that I was. So I actually flew in. I came home on leave, flew from Sacramento up to Portland. I interviewed with the recruiting instructor up there in Portland, and they had agreed to pull me up there. After the recruiting instructor in Portland had found out, he called the recruiter instructor in Sacramento. And so something or other happened. They worked it out, but I did eventually end up back in Sacramento, recruiting out of the high school that I graduated from. And so I was just really fortunate and blessed to have everything happen the way that I wanted to. And that's really where I'd say that my life was completely changed. That time on that duty taught me so much about myself, taught me so much about people, how important it is to really interact and invest in those that you serve with. And I just, I'm blessed because I experienced a level of success that most Marine recruiters just could never even think about achieving. And it's not because I'm anything special or have any extra gift. I just really took everything that had been applied to me and then or everything that I'd learned and everything that had been taught and really just dedicated myself to being a servant leader of those young people that we're trying to bring in to sustain the Corps.
Okay, so when you got through recruiting school and looking back on it now, did you learn how to become that complete salesman and learn all that stuff that your recruiter was like showcasing to you? Like, what were some of the key takeaways from going to your recruiting school, looking back on it now?
So the recruiter school kind of gave me the baseline knowledge of what I needed to know just to kind of understand the process. But really, the education on how to be a good recruiter, how to be a good salesman, it came from the senior career recruiters that were affiliated, with the station. So I had some really great mentors that sat down, really kind of taught me the basics of sales and got me a little bit more advanced. I think in my ability to kind of collect and listen and understand where folks were coming from. And then I just kind of refined it out with my own style, taking into consideration all of my experiences of what it was going to take in order to best prepare and educate this next generation of kid that was going to eventually become Marine. But I'll tell you, I was just so blown away in really my first year how many phenomenal kids that I just kind of crossed paths with and was able to kind of showcase the opportunity and give them the chance to really go out and make a difference for themselves and for the Corps. So it was just kind of a win-win scenario that, I got a ton of fulfillment for. And eventually that's what convinced me to stick around and do that for the long haul, which is the love of impacting humans, watching them grow, being part of that process, and giving back to make better men and women. And I think that's the beauty of recruiting that sometimes gets missed in all the pressures and the stress that come from the duty is the work that you do. That there's nowhere else in this world where at such a young age you can make such a lasting impression on people and really become legendary in their minds. And that's really that's a message that I would fuel to the Marines that I serve with on the duty so that they could take that back to them. And that's really what got me through 15 and a half years on recruiting duty at 3 different recruiting stations in really some of the most challenging areas that you could recruit in the country at the time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a couple questions. So I was going to ask first, what was your favorite assignment? Because it looked like you were in San Francisco, Sacramento, Denver, and then also on top of that, what was your mindset like when you first became a recruiter? Were you bought in saying, "Shit, I'm doing 20 years"? Like, what was your career mindset looking like at for the Marines at that time as well?
Yeah, so I think starting recruiting, it was God, how am I going to survive this? Like I've had a pretty good career, and even though this is going to be fun work, the pressure of what you have to do day in and day out to get the mission accomplished is only recruiters will really ever understand what that experience is like. But it can be pretty terrible if you let that negativity take you over. Um, so I think starting out was like, hey, I just want to do well. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid to give away my career, and just need to focus on doing the right things, for the people. Now, I'll tell you that as I starting off, I didn't really have, I had some investment in the individuals that I worked with, but not to the same degree as it would be at my as I would describe at the tail end of my career. But that was the differentiating factor between me and other guys that I served with, is that I was all in 100% with every single kid that decided that they wanted to raise their right hand and wear God's cloth. So that meant that all my entire life was dedicated to being a servant to these people and helping them through any issues, problems, times that they really needed. As I became a boss of a recruiting station and eventually became a career recruiter, it became more about the young Marines, the young NCOs that I had, and getting them to feel the same way, that if you invest in the people that have decided to invest their lives in this direction for a certain amount of time, that you're going to get more out of them. You're going to get more out of them. You're going to help them grow. They're going to be able to, bring others in because of the work that you've done. And it's just really kind of, it's living and leading by example. And so I think the shift in terms of me deciding to take this as a career really happened as I transitioned from Sacramento to Denver. Sacramento, I made some of the best friends that I've ever had in my life. They were just phenomenal men. They're phenomenal career recruiters. And they're really my tribe of friends that I would do absolutely anything for. And the beautiful thing about it is those same human beings that I served with in Sacramento, I continue to serve with today, and they're part of the tribe. Going out to Denver, Colorado was a completely different experience. And I had kind of forced myself to make that change. I felt like I was a little bit too comfortable recruiting in Sacramento. Things were a little bit easier than what they needed to be. I'd already, accomplished a couple of things and had some accolades. And so I really wanted to kind of test my mettle overall. And so Denver, Colorado was the absolute armpit of Marine Corps recruiting in that time frame when I transitioned out there. So it was a deliberate move. And going out there, just from the skill sets that I had developed and from just my knowledge on recruiting in general, we were able to take Denver from the armpit to not so much the armpit. And again, while we're there, just meeting super impressive young talented Marines and kind of convincing them to be part of the recruiting cult and to be part of this career recruiting nature. And so in that time frame in Denver, those young Marines are really kind of the leaders of Marine recruiting right now. And there are some guys that we invested in back then and just kind of mentored and brought into the club that are doing phenomenal things all throughout the Marine Corps recruiting enterprise right now. And they're really the leaders. And then going to San Francisco, same type of situation. Denver had gotten a little bit easier. We were sustained, but I wanted a challenge and I wanted to be a little bit closer at home. And so San Francisco at the time was the armpit of Marine Corps recruiting. And so I was fortunate enough there to go into a team of just kind of ragtag career recruiters that were super driven, super hungry, came from all different types of recruiting stations. And we were led by a pretty phenomenal recruiting instructor at the time. And again, those times in San Francisco, just investing in our people and caring about those Marines and caring about the bottom line, allowed us to achieve some success. I had the privilege of serving as the recruiting instructor there for really my final year. But I sustained a back injury that was pretty debilitating. And so it really kind of cut my time in the Corps short. So really about 18 years, I had a pinched nerve in my back that caused me to be bedridden for about 30 to 45 days. And then it was everything that I could do just to get rehabbed enough to get back to work, and realizing a couple months into that process where I start work again, that I'm just not going to be at the levels that I need to be at. It's getting harder to kind of maintain body composition standards. And I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do or felt like a leader should be able to do. So rather than become the type of leader that I hate, somebody who doesn't want to be involved in the process, I realized that it was time for me to move on and really, figure out what life was going to look like after the Corps and after recruiting.
Real quick, where do you think the armpit of Marine Corps recruiting is right now?
Man, I don't even know that I could say that because I'm just not that plugged in. I know that everybody right now is just kind of affected by some of these processes that are in play that weren't necessarily full born in play. But there's, at least for Marine Corps recruiting, there's been some major restructures that have happened. So the Detroit, Michigan area, I know that they've been struggling. The 4th Marine Corps district, really up in the Ohio area, it just in that corridor over there, they've had some struggles, but it's looking like the leadership of the Marine Corps Recruiting Command is trying to do right by looking at their structure and making sure that that every single Marine that's out there on the streets has an equal opportunity to contribute to the mission and isn't overtaxed. So yeah, I don't really know, but I can find out for you, Mike, and I'll let you know next time.
No, you're good, man. I'm just curious if there's like one place that's always been plagued and there's one place that's easier than other, but it seems like sometimes it switches up. But that's interesting to know. Now, when you got injured, what was your mind? When did you start thinking of? Well, when you start thinking about, I might have to like step down or do the medically retirement or whatever the case may have been in your mind at the time. How were you feeling trying to step away from that? Because you weren't, like you said, you didn't get all the way to the finish line per se of what you wanted to do, but you still have a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of hard work put into your career as well.
Yeah. Look, I'll be as honest as I can. I didn't know that I was going to ever be able to walk again. I was pretty jacked up. I was pretty bedridden for about 45 days. I couldn't sit upright in a chair. So I literally was laying flat on my stomach or on my back. And at that point, I think that, there were some thoughts about, God, maybe I just need to give up all the way. But I think recruiting mindset, Marine mindset, whatever you want to call it, it was like, nope, screw this. We're going to find a way through. So I started going through, I was going to a chiropractor like 2 times per day, could barely get in the car to lay flat to have a friend haul me off to the chiropractor 2 times per day, but stuck with that for a couple of weeks. Started getting into physical therapy when I could get up and I could walk again, but it was to the point where it would take me, 15, 20 minutes to go from my car upstairs to my office when I finally did get back up to work. And eventually just going through those rehabs, I got myself back to back enough to where I could be on, full duty again. But it was just harder to maintain things because couldn't get the body to act the right way. Just took some time. So in that mindset, when that decision finally came out that it was time to hang it up, I really had probably another 10 years that I could have gone if I wanted to max this thing, if I wanted to max it out. But I just knew that it was going to be a struggle, and the people that I was, serving with, they were going to be impacted because I could not be all the things that a career recruiter, recruiting instructor, master gunnery sergeant type needed to be. So rather than, push it any further than I had, I wrote it right up until about my 20-year mark. I was fortunate enough to have a commanding officer that had realized that taking advantage of a skill bridge program was going to be beneficial to me, because my entire focus up until that point had been on all things recruiting, all things Marine Corps, and my entire life was segmented to that. I'm probably a little bit different than most. Not married, don't have kids. My singular focus was those Marines and making sure that the mission got accomplished. But I can tell you that taking a step back and looking at everything wouldn't change anything that I had done in my career if I could go back in time. But it left me as I went through the transition process feeling a bit empty, feeling a little bit lost and a little bit confused. And so I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to take advantage of a program like SkillBridge to really take that time to invest in me, reconnect, and just kind of reprogram myself so that I could, step off in this next juncture in life, and really have the opportunity to succeed and thrive and live a life that's worth living at this point.
I'm glad that you had a good experience with that and you had a good officer looking out for you, because sometimes people just get spit out the machine per se. So when you were going through that skill bridge, were you planning on your exit? Like, what were you thinking that you wanted to do once you got out? Did you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do as Tom, not Master Gunnery Sergeant McKenzie? Like, I'm going to do this, but or did you not really think about that and just take it day by day, get through the program, and then kind of got a slap in the face once you got out and your time was up and DD 214 was in hand?
Yeah, so my skill bridge was a bit unique, in the sense that, I skill bridged with Allegiant Giving at the time, and really went through the process of kind of learning what it is to be a Salesforce administrator. So started working on the trailhead, started getting some certifications. So I had, a bit of a background understanding the different types of civilian CRMs that exist in the sales world. My mindset kind of leaving the Marine Corps, just with a sales and training background, was focused on making money. Like, that's the only thing I considered. It's like, I just want to get into a job where I make massive amounts of money. And so that was my focus as I was, coming out of the Marine Corps and starting this skill bridge. But going through that transition process, and having that retirement ceremony, and prior to that retirement ceremony, you're used to getting phone calls and text messages and bombarded with everybody needing your attention and help. And then you have that ceremony and it's great, and you party with your friends. And then the next day you wake up and you don't have all the crazy phone calls and text messages. And that's pretty refreshing. It's like, okay, I like this. This is pretty good. You start going through the process where, you're sleeping in, doing some other things that you want to do that you haven't been able to do for the point. Started growing out the beard, everything's feeling great.
Yeah.
But after about that 30-day lull period that I had of just kind of taking some time for myself, things just didn't feel right anymore. That pressure, that constant parasympathetic state that you're in on recruiting duty, just being focused, not having that type of pressure on, it just made me feel kind of like weird on the inside. And so as I'm doing that and missing the opportunity to kind of mentor young Marines, mentor young people, affect them in their lives, and kind of give my advice, it really kind of impacted me not to have that. And so ultimately, as I'm on the job search, and there are a couple opportunities that hit the wicket that were offers for me, high yielding salaries, high pressure sales jobs, and something that I felt like I was going to be happy doing. The reality kind of hit me, as some personal things in my life started to unfold, and losing some family members, and losing some other Marines that I had served with. It really just kind of opened my eyes that maybe it's not about the high yielding salary. That's not what brings me fulfillment. I've been a lucky human being for the vast majority of my career to be fulfilled every single day, and to wake up loving the job that I do every single day, and loving the fact that we're touching human lives and making them better. We're making them better humans. And so it really kind of shifted in my mind that I needed to find something that was going to allow me to give back, was going to allow me to kind of be a source of motivation and positivity for the people that are going to go through similar experiences. And so ultimately I was offered a job at Allegiant Giving, as the business development manager, and that just kind of ticked all the boxes. And the focus of our efforts has been on, providing opportunities to service members, serving as mentors to kind of help them through this process, and then really being advocates to, help the active duty military community understand the true causes of, the true causes or events that lead to tragic outcomes for veterans. Everybody gets obsessed about talking about suicide and underemployment, and those are symptoms. They're not the disease. Those are symptoms of transition. They're not the disease. The disease is the transition process itself. And so there are so many great TAPS coordinators out there. There's so many great mentors. They do a lot of good work. It's just the reality is when that information is going out to our service members, they're so focused on the mission and so focused on the things that they've got to do on a daily basis that they can't really digest that information, and most don't have the ability to go next. And then you've got the senior mentors, the senior NCOs, those officers, they've never transitioned themselves either. So although they might have some good ideas, they've never walked a mile in those shoes. So that we're not really able to kind of help treat the actual disease itself. And that's making sure that service members are educated on everything that they need to know as they're going out the door, and that there are tangible resources that are there for them to take advantage of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. No one's done it that's still going to PT the next day. They can try to sit you down and ask you what you're going to do, or some people use scare tactics and say, "What are you going to do?" Everyone's got to transition. Whether you're a master gunnery sergeant or a 4-star general or a lance corporal, you're getting out someday. So you're absolutely right about that. I was going to ask you, going through your own transition and looking back on it now, what would your advice be to anyone that's yet to transition out, or that may be going through it right now, or that's already transitioned out but still has some work to do, whether it's on the VA side of things or just finding their next mission in life?
Man, that's a lot. So I'll segment it down. So if somebody's still on active duty and you have not, you're not really sure what's coming, or retirement's coming, but you want to learn from the mistakes, I'd say first thing is find a mentor. Find somebody who's crushing it on the outside, that's recently transitioned within the last couple of years, and just start getting into some exploratory conversations with them and ask for their tips and tricks. So that would be the very first thing that I would do is make sure that you seek some mentors and that you carve out that time for yourself. The second thing that you really need to do, in my opinion, is it's in your best interest to take a personal inventory of who you are as an individual, and really kind of lay out the goals that you have for yourself as you're transitioning. I think that too many service members, they know they're not going to stick in their organizations. They know they're getting out once their contracts are done. They obsess about that day when it comes. Well, if you're in that boat, do something about it. It's not okay to just fully invest yourself in work. It's not okay to, fully invest yourself in your buddies in the barracks. You have to take some tangible steps and start crafting a plan. That plan doesn't have to be 100% solid, but you can't do the typical veteran retreat, as I like to dub it. The typical veteran retreat is, I know I'm getting out. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back home and I'm going to figure it out. That's the worst thing that anybody could do in the situation. So another bit of advice, hey, get in touch with the folks over at Allegiant Vets. They're an outstanding organization. We take a lot of one-on-one calls where we sit down and help folks develop a 5-step battle plan on what they want to do, by understanding what they want to accomplish, and us trying to align them with other resources and opportunities to kind of fill in those gaps. So that would be a good one. But we're not the only one. And so I would encourage anybody that's still on active duty that has not fully researched or doesn't have an understanding of what the SkillBridge program is, to seek that information out and to start doing your research. On Facebook, there's a group known as the SkillBridge Network, run by a guy by the name of Keith Hemricks. He developed a community of people just to kind of answer the questions when it comes to all things SkillBridge. He is a veteran advocate, absolute badass, and has cultivated a group for a lot of that information to be sought after. Other bits of advice that I would give. So there's an organization known as American Corporate Partners, Alpha Charlie Papa. Hands down, if you go to alphacharliepapa-usa.org, they have a mentorship program that they put forth that allows a veteran or a soon-to-be veteran to be connected with an industry mentor that has experience in the career field that you're trying to break into in corporate America. And they allow one-on-one consultations to be done, with you. So you get one-on-one counseling sessions over the course of 12 months. And, I did not have an ACP mentor when I was going through transition, but I, just started taking advantage of that for myself. And so I've got connected with this really badass human that's recently retired from corporate America, but he was a biopharma sales person, absolutely crushed it. And the thing that I take away from him, and really where my life's been impacted by that program, is the fact that man, he lives the balanced life that I'm really seeking for me. So crushes it, crushes it in corporate America, but then he crushes it with his family. He crushes it in his personal life. There's a clear, healthy delineation of, work and play. And so I'll just tell you, getting connected with that guy has changed my life, and, super grateful for his mentorship. And this organization has free services for active duty service members that are within 180 days of separating, and for the veteran population out there that needs a little bit of assistance. And then last thing, if it's somebody on the outside that's a veteran that's struggling, I would just tell them, hey, we're, the mantra at Allegiant Vets, we're always by your side. It's not just a mantra or a tagline that we throw around. So we want to help everybody that we can. So if there are vets that are struggling, hey, and you have nowhere else to go, hit us up, get in contact with me. More than happy to help you with whatever opportunity we can, because this community that we're building over here is just a phenomenal support system for anybody at any stage that's served. And it's really kind of fulfilling and backfilling that sense of community that's so important, that I don't think we talk about enough when it comes to transition. Losing your community, losing your comrades really will affect you. So you need to find a new one. And if it's not a veteran community, it needs to be something else. But that's one thing that is just not talked about enough with this transition, is once you lose your people and you lose your tribe and they're not there day in, day out, that's where just the mental games will really start to affect you and start chipping away at your confidence. And again, it's about treating the disease more so than it is treating the symptoms. So do the right thing and make sure that you stay connected.
I appreciate you sharing that. And sounds like, yeah, you got to get to the root cause rather than the symptoms. Absolutely right. And the website for you guys is allegiantvets.org. I'll put that in the notes of this podcast when it airs on YouTube. But now, Tom, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on here, sharing your wealth of knowledge, your expertise, give everyone a little bit of your story. It seems like you're doing great things. I'm glad I found you and you answered the call to action on LinkedIn. And I'm looking forward to talking with Marcus, who's the founder of Allegiant Vets. He'll be joining me on an episode, and I'm hoping to add value into your guys' community sometime soon. And if anyone needs Thomas, he's on LinkedIn. He responds fast. You guys reach out to Allegiant Vets, tap in, and if you guys are a veteran or you know someone that wants to come on and share their story, you see the email right there, thereal1%1@gmail.com. I'd be happy to have anybody on. Don't let anyone ever tell you that your voice doesn't matter or your story doesn't matter, because it does. And like Tom said, don't let that sense of community go to waste as soon as you get out of the military, because you're going to find yourself in a dark place. And it doesn't matter if it's military people or not. You need people around you to support you, build you up, bring you up to speed, and just make you the best version of yourself. One last question before we go today, and anything else I left out, you could tap in. But I was going to ask you, what's one thing that you miss the most about the Marines? But you can't say community, because everyone's been saying that. We know I think if you ask anybody, it would be the camaraderie in the community. But besides that, what's one thing you miss about the Corps?
I would say it's the mutual suffering, right? And I know that sounds sick, but I'll tell you, the worst times that I had in the moment always ended up being the best times and where the growth was. So it was just that. It was that mutual suffering that you're going through. And I'd say second to that, it's walking around in dress blues at the Marine Corps birthday ball. That's always a good time. So if you haven't experienced that, Mike, I'm going to get you to one at some point, because that'll change your life. But those would be the two things that I miss the most.
All right, for sure. I'm down to go one time. And it's a funny story on that real quick. I was working in Africa, in Niger, and there was a Navy veteran, and they actually had the Marine Corps ball because they have an embassy over there, like the Radisson Blue Hotel. And we were I was in like a soccer jersey and shorts. He was drunk. He's like, "We're going to get in, man." I said, "Dude, I'll go with you, because I'm not going to let you go over there by yourself, but we're not getting in there, dude." And they came over, some higher up Marines were like, "You guys don't have any pants or nothing?" But the dude was drunk. But I kind of think that's funny, and a funny way to end this podcast of, yeah, I do probably have to get to a Marine Corps ball dressed appropriately, not in a Real Madrid soccer jersey and Jordan shorts in Niger. So, now, my man, appreciate you coming on the show, laying it all on the line. And this isn't the only time you're going to see Tom. We got big things planned for the future. So if you guys made it this far, hopefully you like, comment, subscribe in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about the episode, and continue to be great. Don't give up. And thanks for listening this far. I hope you guys have a blessed rest of y'all day. Take care.
Thanks.